Okay, can we please rise for the pledge to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President Cannon?
Here.
Vice President Clements?
Here.
Trustee Daly?
Here.
Trustee Parr?
Here.
Trustee Schwartz?
Here.
Okay, thank you and welcome. We're going to start off this meeting by taking a moment of silence for Forrest Rizariski, who was a former Haldane graduate who recently passed away. Okay, thank you. Welcome. Glad to have everybody back. I hear first day was great, and looking forward to a very successful and great year ahead. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bowers for her superintendent's report.
Although, and I'm sorry that I'm going to put you on the spot, Charlie, but I just want to introduce our new resource officer. And Charlie, could you just come up to the microphone here just for 2 seconds? I promise we won't put... So, Paul Piazza has been promoted in the Sheriff's Department, and he is actually going to be here in a number of capacities on this side of the river, or this side of the county, I should say, on the riverside of Putnam County. And Charlie is our new resource officer, Charlie Johnson. When Paul was working in the Brewster School District, Charlie filled into his place when he left, and now when he has left Hamilton, Charlie is filling in again. I'm sorry. Sorry. That was Freudian. So sorry about that. So would you just give a little background on yourself? And
Sure. My name's Charles Johnson. I'm a deputy with the Putnam County Sheriff's Department. I've been with them for about 5 years now. Prior to this, I was at 2 years at JFK Elementary School as their school resource officer. And I'm actually I was a certified teacher, special ed and literacy, so I bring that background with me into the schools. And I hope to work closely with the staff and the students and become part of the community like Paul has. So.
Thank you.
so Paul is actually joining us this week, and he's introducing Charlie around and to the students, to the parents, but I did want to give everybody an opportunity to meet our new resource officer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you all.
Okay, we have a lot to share because we've had limited numbers of board meetings before over the summer. So this is going to be a little bit of what happened over the summer and the beginning on introduction to the school year. So it was a wonderful day. It was great to have the kids back. It was upbeat and positive and high energy and everything we would hope for the first day of school. So we're very happy to see the kids back. So the first thing on the agenda here is the Haldane Academy. For those of you who have been kind of following our discussions on the Haldane Academy, last year it was at St. Basil's Academy. This year it's in Mabel Merritt. And so we had an opening this year with 6 kids at the present time. One is a tuition student from the Putnam Valley School District, and we anticipate that there will be a few others that are joining the academy. We have taken over 3 main rooms and will be extending one of the rooms probably mid-fall. But I think it's going to work fine there. It's unfortunate that it doesn't have the opportunity to stay where it was, but we are very happy to have the students here at the Haldane Academy. So the enrollment at today's numbers were 858. If you remember last year at the close, we were at 833. But one of the things I would like to also point out is we graduated a class, I think it was 73 or 74, and we brought in a class of 32. So we had 70 plus kids leaving, 32 kids coming in kindergarten. So the difference between 833 and 858 is actually much more extensive if you consider the fact that we have a small kindergarten class. And just as it was last year, we had a similar small kindergarten class last year. Our first grade class now is back to 49. So it appears that some parents just choose to keep their kids in daycare for kindergarten, and then when they start first grade, they come in. So we were in the 30s last year, we're at 49, and we anticipate that will grow.
Sorry, I'm just going to ask. I'm noticing that the high school is really where these larger numbers are coming into play. And I know last year the current 11th grade did not have 90 students, so we had about 10 to 12 additional students come in that grade.
We've had, and actually we have a number of seniors that have come in, which is very unusual. Usually kids don't transfer in junior and senior year, but we are at 90, which has been, for the first time in many years, we have a class of 90 in our junior year. And we are at 80, where are we? I guess 81 is our next highest class, and that's in 7th grade. So yeah, we're looking at our numbers continuing and to go up, and we'll see where that ends. So.
Diana, when do students typically enroll into the district? Does it mostly happen in the summer? Is it throughout the school year?
I would say the majority is through the summer, although we've had a lot of students that have come in August this year. And so we had our lower numbers we were still relatively normal in July, but then we had a number of new students that came in. One of the things that we are seeing, and this is going to have to be a conversation that we're going to have, especially around budget time, but we have a number of ELL, English language learners. We've had a number of students that have come in who are mainly Spanish speaking. And have very little English. So we're starting to see a slight shift in that demographic, and we'll have to figure out what we need. At this point, I think we are okay with the ELL services that we have within the district. We are hiring a teaching assistant aide that is Spanish speaking that can also help, but that's going to be a conversation we're going to have.
And so those are the primary grades. We don't have kids yet coming in like in the upper elementary or middle school grades who are EL eligible.
Oh, yeah. Actually, the students I'm talking about that
really?
recently came in, they're high school age.
Oh,
So
okay.
it can be
different.
any
I had
place.
this image, I'm glad I asked, because I had this image of it being children who were entering the formal school system for the first time. So yeah, that does present.
And so we talked about adding another teacher, another section for 2nd grade, but we haven't talked about adding any other teachers or resources in any other grade. Right. So are you feeling like the current staffing can accommodate these 80, 90 size
Well,
grades?
we're going to have large sections in 7th grade.
And we're having large sections in high school, and that's starting to be put on my radar. I'm not exactly happy with having 28 kids in a chemistry class.
Right. And that's problematic since there's only 24 stations. So, yeah. But those are the numbers that will hopefully kind of work themselves out through the first week or two of school. And we can change schedules if the classes are too large. But in 7th grade with 81 kids, you're looking at numbers in the mid to upper 20s, and that's gonna happen, and we're gonna have to look at that. The one problem with some of these situations where you have 10 or 12 kids that are coming in August is you have no time to prepare. Right. The budget's over. The budget has been decided upon. The voters have voted. This is the funding that we have for the year, and we have to figure out what next steps are. So there may be a point in time where I come and ask for additional staffing if that's necessary, but right now we're not at that point.
Diana, the Haldane Academy students, do they count in the numbers of the 9, 10, 11, 12?
Yes,
So they're part of that number?
yes.
Okay.
That's only 6 students.
Well, okay, I'm just getting a sense,
Yeah, no,
though,
I'm
of,
saying
of-
6 students amongst.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not discounting what
Right.
you're saying with the size, but I'm just, that was a separate thought question.
Yeah. And 5 of them are returning students, so these are kids that we had in the academy last year, and we're in the numbers last year, but we do have 1 new student that has come in. Okay. So we received our grades 3 through 8 New York State ELA and math scores, which are relatively consistent with what we've had in the past. We have in the mathematics, we have 57% of our students that are considered proficient. Compared to the state, that's a much higher score. We have similar results with the ELA. So if you have an interest in learning about the scores for the 3-8 tests, they are on board docs, and it can tell you grade by grade the number of students, also the subcategories, the number of students that are in those, and who's achieving proficiency or better. So
I actually think what's posted on board docs may be a year old because it's got the 15, 16. I was wanting to actually read these tables and I couldn't remember what the two columns were. And so I went and looked, and I'm sorry, but I didn't do it until late this afternoon. I would have let somebody know. I went and looked at the state,
New York database.
the New York database. And so the New York, the off NICID, you can get the state report, you can get the district report cards for the 16, 17, and what we have on board docs is 15, 16.
so then
And that's actually really, really important, right? Because there was a big change in testing between 14, 15 and 15, 16, and so we see how different the scores are. And if you look at 16, whatever, last year and the year before that, you actually see much more similar results in both ELA and mathematics.
okay, well, we'll double check that.
And the individual scores have not been reported to us yet.
No, they have not.
Oh, wow, that's late.
Yeah, well, they're printing out the reports at this point for all the students in New York State, so.
Can I ask an overall question on
Sure.
this too? So I'm looking at this, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it looks like our highest scores, we have 58% proficiency, which means we have 42% of kids who are not proficient. Is that interpreting that incorrectly?
No, you're interpreting it correctly. But let me explain, give you a little bit of background with what that is. So these are the number of kids that are achieving a 3 or a 4 on the New York State Math and ELA. But if you watch what has happened in New York State, they changed the cut scores, and they've dramatically changed the cut scores. So the 3s and the 4s are generally up about 80%. And so it means that students that they consider proficient would get an 80, so to speak, on the test. So what they used to consider a 2 is far below the cut score between 2 and 3. And so when you look at AIS services and some of the other things that we are required to do to remediate kids that are struggling with their tests, the cut score is always within the 2s because that's where the 3 used to end and the 2 used to begin. And so they have pushed everything up. And they're saying that this is where we want our kids to be. It gets very complex, but this is where they want the kids to be in order to achieve the level that they want students to achieve in the 11th grade ELA and the algebra regents.
So what are we looking at as a good score? Because to me, 42% of the kids who are not proficient does not sound like a good thing. It does not. Oh, I'm sorry. To me, that doesn't sound like a good thing.
First of all,
so
these
what's
are
the
old
number?
scores. These
Right.
When I looked on New York database earlier today, we actually improved as a district slightly.
That's what I would assume.
It's also there. Yes, but
And they tell you the number of students per grade
who opted
who
out.
opted out, and that's how they compare you on New York databases. You can't see it here, but
Yeah.
in comparison to other schools, how many students took it in that grade versus how many took it at Haldane and how many scored. This report really is not showing us.
So Margaret, what you're thinking about, it's apples and oranges, because the level that they want students to attain, and we would love our students to attain those levels, are what they consider college and career ready, which is generally a 75 on the algebra regents and an 80 on ELA. So what they do is they extrapolate backwards to all of the testing in 8th through and then down to 3rd grade in order to find where a student should be achieving to be at the college and career readiness level when they hit 11th grade or 9th grade or whenever they're taking their test.
So, but does that mean 42% of our kids are not on the track to be career and college
keep in
ready
mind
by
that
the time
we-
they're in 11th
Yep.
grade?
Except
Go ahead.
I hate to disagree with you, Diana. But we have a huge opt-out rate, right? We have a lot of parents that are opting out of this test. I think, probably a lot, I don't hate standardized testing. I think standardized test scores are important. I think it's really critically important that we not make that big of a deal of these scores because we have such a high opt-out rate. And I do think that these tests are, we're continuing to get used to new tests and new standards, and so what I guess, actually, what the board might like to know is one of the tests that we do see all our kids take, are these NWEA tests, and that might be a better
That's a better indicator.
measure than something like this, because we know we have a high opt-out rate, and so I don't really know what it's telling us.
And that's
Well,
why
that's the
data is
question.
important.
Right.
When you're looking at data, when I saw this, I went to the New York Database website, and you can do a much better comparison because it gives you the number of kids and that took it at Haldane, which in one grade was 21, versus a larger district who had
200.
Yeah.
Yep. So I can tell you, we are definitely not resting on our laurels. It's not something that we ignore, but it's also, this is one measure of multiple measures that we have. And actually the NWEA, what we look at is the growth score. You want to make sure a child is growing a year's growth in a year's time.
Right.
And so the growth score numbers are good. We had most of our teachers who are being measured by use of these are attaining the Heidi ratings of effective, which means that their kids are growing a year's growth in a year's time. What you want to look at is the individual growth scores for the students, which is what Laura's talking about, to see how the students are performing. But if you also look at the state levels, not saying that we ever want to have scores that are similar to the states, but we're generally about 20% higher than the average in New York State. So there's a lot of things with psychometrics that you really need to understand, and there's a lot of things that when you look at these tests, there are things there are questions on tests that are made for students not to answer correctly, and that's the differentiation between a 3 and a 4. And so you have to look at all the psychometric measures. It's not just, did they get an 80 on the test? Are they achieving a year's growth in a year's time? And I think that at this point, the indicator that is more important than the score itself is the growth score. But then you also have to make sure that they're calculating the growth score in a way that is fair and is equitable and really measures what you hope it measures. So it's something that we consider and we look at it all the time. It's also something that we know that there has been so much shift and change, whether it's the Common Core or the different levels of the growth score. If the growth scores if they are where they were years ago before they changed the cut points, we'd probably be somewhere between 85 and 90.
Okay.
But I do think the important thing that you said there, Dana, that I want to just bring to everyone's attention is that we're not sitting on our laurels, right? And I think it's this tricky balancing act, right? Like we know everybody can always get better. We know we know there are ways that we can get better, and yet at the same time, I think to get too head up over these test scores would be counterproductive. Not that they're not important, but
And I think
Yeah.
once we get the right data, we
Right.
can have better conversation. Like I said, we did improve in the 17 year. It wasn't tremendous, but it was growth. And actually, the Commissioner of Education put out a whole YouTube series of YouTube discussing that just overall, New York State, has improved slightly. So I can forward you that link.
Yeah, and for those of you who have an interest in it, I'll go on tomorrow onto the portal and make sure that we have the updated scores. But they are similar to how we've scored in prior years. Very similar.
And one of the things I think these scores, I don't want to spend too much, this time. One of the things I think the scores can be good for is to look and see, well, but we don't really, how we're doing for different kinds of groups. That's also really important. Like, to what extent are we serving, but are there achievement gaps? Like, that is something I think any of these tests can tell us, and it's something to pay attention to. So.
And we do. We do have some achievement gaps, and that's something that we have to consider this year. That's something we are going to be discussing. Okay, continuing on. Tuition students, and we've been talking about some of the requests that have come into the district where parents are willing to pay to tuition their students into Haldane. So we've had a number of requests from families outside the district. As you know, with the increase in enrollment, this is something that we really have to consider and really have to talk about and have kind of an understanding of as to where we're going as a district. And so we continue to have conversations, but I don't know, it's kind of been back and forth, and we really need to consider what our stance is going to be.
I do think it's something we really need to have a conversation about.
I feel like I thought we had a whole conversation about it.
I feel like we really got down to the
issue at hand?
I don't know. And I have to
I think
say,
we kinda
my
had
thinking has
conversation
changed.
That I
She does not, you're
I'm
not, Laura's not.
totally against it, especially the fact that the growing numbers in the high school. This district was built upon small numbers, and
Right.
that's what I'd like it to be.
But if you look at the policy, it says very clearly on letter B that no increase in the size of faculty or staff will be necessary.
And we're getting there.
So, but I feel like we've worked in that parameter.
We have for that moment in time, but what we're seeing is once we allow kids in, we want to keep them here. I mean, if they're our students, they're our students, and that if we have additional 5, 7, 10 students that join that grade level the following year, it's still part of the equation.
No, I mean, Jen's completely right, that the policy is written in a way that we can make these decisions on a case-by-case basis, which I think is the intention of the policy, right?
I think what Dr. Bowers is saying is that more and more requests are coming in, not just at the high school level, middle school.
Yeah.
Looking at a kindergarten number of 32, I wouldn't mind if somebody wanted to tuition their student in, but I do have a problem once you're starting to get into high school and you have 80, 90 kids, that's a tough act to balance.
It's an interesting thing that Diana just said, though, that in the moment, you can make the decision to say, hey, we've got space in kindergarten. We meet all these parameters, no problem. But then if in first grade we have a whole bunch of kids and we're looking at a new section, can we tell that kid who's tuitioning in, sorry, we don't have room for you? I mean, we could say that that's what we do, but would that be, counter to our stance of like, once you're here, you're here. So, I mean, that's an interesting, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it that way. In the, what happens next.
I guess, I don't know if now is the time or we want to do it at a workshop meeting because there's a big agenda, but I think we are going to continue to get those requests. And I think in the past, my feeling was like, well, why not? But space is at such a premium, and I think it's still a case by case basis, and I think that's how we want it. But I think that's exactly right. If you bring kids in elementary school, we're going to turn them away at the time when they get to 6th grade. Technically we could, but I don't think it's the business we want to get into. But right now, space is a really, really huge issue, and it's not expanding. So
So could I suggest that maybe some time we have a pre-meeting where we really sit down and look at all the statistical parameters and.
Do we want to wait and have that conversation and just kind of put a hole in it until we do our demographic study?
That would be a smart move.
I mean, I wonder, I don't know what the timing of that is. I know we just mentioned that at the end of last year, but it seems like, I mean, I just had a family move into the house next door to me that had no kids. They have kids. Great, lovely, perfect. You know, but like what is happening in the community? I have no idea.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a bigger conversation of how we want to proceed. And I think it would be interesting, you know, to have the information in front of us. How many of our kids are currently tuitioning in?
Right.
What does that actually look like right now?
Right.
Who are those kids? Where are they coming from? What grade are they coming into? How much revenue are we seeing from that? You know, I'd like to see all that information as we talk about it. So
Trends.
Yeah.
Where the requests are coming. Like, I mean, I know we have them, but like, I think that's exactly right, the numbers. But I may end up siding with Laura. And then we have sides, and then we always come to a consensus. But I'm feeling a little more conservative.
And I think as I'm going through the high school years, I'm hearing more and more, you know, I was used to class sizes of 14, 17, 18. And when I'm hearing 28, 26, that starts to get,
That's not, yeah.
that's not what we are and not what we can handle, quite honestly. I mean, like you said, there's 24 stations in a chemistry class. Right now, there's 28. So these are things that small schools have to deal with, and it's something that we just need to keep on the radar.
But I think that's a good idea to get the demographic study done, and then we'll really have an understanding of what we're doing. Okay. All right, White Hill. We have, for those of you who have been with us over the last couple of years, you have been hearing us talk about a piece of property that the district owns on White Hill, and it's at the end of the cul-de-sac. It's a 5-acre parcel that is not on the market, but at this point we've had 2 different people approach the district about selling the property. We did look at, we had an estimate last year as far as the value, and it came in at $285,000. We've already had at one point a full price offer on the land, but again, it's not on the market, and we have 2 different groups that are now approaching us about it. So I guess the question is, are we planning to change our mind and look at the potential of selling, or are we holding it and for the rainy day and figuring out what we're going to do with it?
I think we talked about this last year.
Yep.
In public, and from recollection was that we're not ready to sell that right now. I don't know if anybody's opinion's changed. Mine still remains that I'm not ready to sell that.
I think the consensus was that we didn't really have a good reason to.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's property, it's there, it's a good rainy day fund. If we needed to sell it, it's nice to know we have something that we can sell if,
Right.
if we really needed the funds.
I mean, and it's clear it's desired. I mean, and you know, there's every reason to expect the value could go up, and that's even better for the district, and that's our responsibility. But we're also always talking about, like, you know, space and stuff. I mean, I don't think we're going to build a new school over there, but I mean, we're not.
lot of
but
steps.
I mean, I actually don't think I've ever seen the property. But you never know. You never know.
You never know what's possible.
You never
it's
know
nice
what's
to know. It's nice to have a possibility.
Elementary.
There you go. They can take the steps. Gym class is getting to school.
So, yeah.
So I think right now we're still at,
Yeah.
I think we're holding tight on the
Yeah,
not
'cause
for
I think the
sale.
whole idea was like, at least with the property, the pond, was the field, we were able to point to something that was for that, in the auditorium.
Right.
Whereas this would be just money that would go in the bank and kind of get lost, and like, we would never be able to point to, that was a trade for that.
And it's a lot of money, but in our budget, it's not a lot of money, right? I mean, it's not.
there's
Not
something
that
to me about preserving some land around us. I mean, that butts up right to the field. So, I mean, there's possibilities for us too, that somewhere down the road we may need that or use it.
Well, I told the gentleman that I would bring it forward, or both of them actually, and so I have my answer. Thank you. Okay, returning to a conversation that we have had in the past once again. A few years back, we talked about the concept of cutting students from teams on both the modified JV and varsity level. And we have a number of students. I mean, the good news is our kids are very much involved in sports and they're part of a number of teams. But there may be a shift in the thinking on the board level. So we have a number of parents that shared concerns about not cutting on the varsity level. So I thought we should open it up for conversation, hear a little bit about what your thinking is. If the tide has changed and the philosophy is different, then we should know that as well.
So I don't have my finger on the pulse of the community, so I don't know what the concern is. I mean, unless it's just like we should start cutting at varsity level and what that would mean.
I think I raised some of the concern at our retreat. Having a team of 30 athletes is crazy. It doesn't benefit those that can play, and it's not going to benefit those that are sitting on the bench, in my opinion. If you're talking about a modified level, it kind of makes sense not to cut kids, because at that level they're probably developing, and who knows? At the varsity level, you know your athletes, and we shouldn't be, I don't want to use the word punishing, but it's difficult, for coaches to coach a team of 30 kids when you can play 11. It's not fair to the athletes that have playing time, because the coaches are trying to do their best to work with the team rather than the ones that would be playing.
Eleanor, you were bringing this up in regards to soccer specifically.
Well, right now,
Because we don't have a JV team, is
Right.
that correct? So
right now that's soccer, but that could turn in an instant. If we're saying no cuts across the board, 40 kids could show up for a basketball team and only 5 play.
So my question, I guess, is that true? Do we say no cuts across the board? Or is it just that this soccer situation has presented itself, there's no JV team, so everybody's in varsity?
Well, that's the big question that I had, because at the retreat, I had never heard that we couldn't cut.
They've certainly cut in the past.
Absolutely.
We've been on a lot of teams, and they've certainly cut in the past.
Well, I believe it was 3 years ago, we had a similar conversation around this table, and there was a different philosophy. And I have here, within the philosophy of the athletic handbook, we included this, which says the Haldane athletic program will try to accommodate as many student athletes as possible. Having an inclusive program allows more students to have an athletic experience. Under certain circumstances, students may not be able to participate on teams or in athletic programs. And that was included a few years back.
But that to me doesn't say no cuts.
Well, I think that the intention was no cuts, that we wouldn't cut. I think there were concerns that if we made it cut and dry, I mean, if you had a student that had a discipline issue and they were on the team and you said no cuts, then you're going to be dealing with the fact that you said no cuts. And so we tried to make it under more of a philosophical statement that we believe that kids are probably better served when they're busy and they're on teams, which we still believe, but then it may not be all teams that we feel that way for. And it seems like the tide, as I said again, is shifting a little bit. But the wording was chosen the way it was for a number of reasons, but basically that was what it meant.
I see.
I'm sorry, but I think, I mean, obviously this is a bigger question that has to be addressed by the athletic department, but I know one thing that came up in the retreat, which is, I mean, if you're cutting juniors and seniors and playing 7th and 8th graders, maybe that needs to be addressed as well, that, do we really need to go into the middle school for athletes if we have students that could fill that role You know, because what is our goal? Is our goal to put the best team forward no matter what the age, or is the goal to service the high school? These are high school teams. So maybe that's something that needs to be looked at, you know. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. Is it 1 7th grader? Is it 1 8th grader? Do we have 5 8th graders when we cut 5 11th graders? That doesn't seem fair to me.
No, I agree with that.
That needs to be
And I think the
looked at.
difference, we tried to field 3 teams this year for girls soccer, and we just didn't have the numbers to allow that to happen. So now we're looking, we have a modified and a varsity team, and we wanted to keep as many students active and busy and part of the program as we could. But it seems to have ripple effects, and we have to consider that.
Well, couldn't we have, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I would think it would be the same thing about class size, right? Like once your varsity hits, I don't know, 25 kids. Well, 25 is even the
Ideally,
norm.
18 kids would be,
18.
I mean, you
I don't
play
know what it-
11 athletes for soccer. More than 18 seems,
What does Chris think? I mean, really,
don't-
this is something that
this is,
it's definitely a policy decision for us to make because it comes from a policy. But I mean, I would really like to hear what Chris thinks about it.
As to what's really happening on all of the teams. Like, do the other teams, is this an across the board, the entire athletic department really follows this and nobody's making any cuts? Or is it that certain sports make cuts and certain sports don't make cuts?
Especially for the young kids, we really try to keep the kids involved.
The modified.
but
The
that's
modified.
not what's really happening either on certain teams. So we have to make a
Yes.
decision. If you're playing modified, we're not going to cut modified. I get that. At the JV and varsity level, there has to be cuts.
Right, you're not doing anybody any
You're not
favors.
doing a service
And
to
also,
anyone.
what about the coaches? I mean,
What's
is
that?
it really
A
safe?
certain number.
Like if you're saying don't do any cuts, like even on the modified level, but if like 50 kids show up,
That's the
you
thing.
know, are you, okay, no cuts, like, let's have
Well,
all
so
Haldane on the modified.
Yeah, that's my other question. I mean, if we're going to commit to saying, okay, no cuts at modified, then we also have to commit to saying, okay, well, supply enough
staff it.
coaches.
Right, which
You know
is
what I
why
mean?
we
So,
put the
like-
additional money in a couple of years ago.
Financially, we would have to say, okay, 50 kids show up for modified. That means we've got 3 coaches and we're going to foot the bill for that.
Yeah, and I can
No
tell you
questions
that
asked.
on modified teams, when you have large teams, they tend to go, one of the options is to have an A team and a B team, and they play half as many games as they would have played if there was just one team. But they all have the opportunity to experience it, they all have the opportunity to practice, and they all have the opportunity to play. So there are options if you are looking to keep your younger kids involved. And you don't want to tell a kid in 7th grade that you can't play sports. And that would be the end of it. It's they're too young for them to be really taken into a position where they feel that they can't compete or they can't take part.
Well, I mean, personally, I think it's completely appropriate for coaches to be able to select players for a JV team or a varsity team based on skill level. I mean, I think that's completely appropriate. I think we have several opportunities for kids, if that's not their sport, they're not good enough to be on the team, there's other things for them to do.
Right. And that was my other point, is if we say no cuts here, then there better be no cuts for the play either. That's, you're going to have everybody in a part in the play.
Which they almost do, right?
They kind of don't,
With two
they
different-
do that.
And that's why
That's why there's 2
double cast
casts.
the play.
That's why the two.
Yep.
I mean, I have no problem with there being,
Sorry.
with there not being competition.
How are we dealing with
Wait, I just
uniforms?
wanted to finish what I was saying. That I don't have a problem with it. I just want to make sure that it's being instituted the same way across the sports, the same way by the same coaches, like that they're not differences. I mean,
Yeah, there can't be different. There can't be somebody, a senior being cut so that we can put an 8th grader on a team. There can't be, there has to be a philosophy of the attempt is a caring attempt to make everybody as good as they can be and to participate as much as they want to. But at the end of the day, there should be some standards that are upheld, and I think that means a coach can cut
And
people.
that brings up another point. Athletes testing up, when you said an 8th grader.
Playing varsity,
Like-
I mean, I don't.
However, I mean, back in the day, an 8th grader that tested up was asked to test up because they had the potential to be good or just as good or better than a 12th grader, and they get pulled up for that reason. What is happening today seems like everybody can test up, and if you make it, great, let's try and get you on a team.
Seems
And
to
that's
me
not
it
the
should be
philosophy
like
that it used to be.
A
And-
super duper exception for an 8th grader to be on a varsity team. I mean, even just what's going on in the locker room. Should an 8th grader be in the locker rooms with the seniors? I mean, I don't.
And that's another part of this whole discussion.
Yeah.
So I will ask Chris to put something in writing, give you his thoughts, and have him report out when he comes at the next meeting.
Can we take public comment? We can take public comment. So if anybody has any comments about this, just come up to the microphone.
Hi, I've had children on Haldane Sports since 2004. So
Just introduce yourself, sorry.
Marie
I know.
Kane Sites. So I've seen trends specifically, I guess, with soccer and track, where we've had modified JV and varsity some years, and some years we just have modified and varsity, and some years we just have JV and varsity. So I think what happened this year, we didn't have JV teams for soccer for boys and girls, so we have very large varsity teams. And I think what hasn't been brought up here tonight, which is why I wanted to comment, is safety. I think when you have that many kids on a team who are playing at a varsity level, it's unsafe. So you have kids who are elite varsity athletes or varsity athletes, and they're out there playing their game. And then you have 8th graders or high school students who are not skilled enough really to be on a varsity team playing. There's the possibility of injury. So a lot of travel teams, they don't even let their players play on their school teams until they're in high school, because they feel that once they're in high school playing on a varsity team, they're playing with other athletes who know how to play the game. So the chance for injury is that much less. But at Haldane, the policy now is any kid can play on the field, and there's a greater chance for injury. And I've seen it over and over again, and it's very dangerous, and it changes a kid's life. So I think that's like the biggest issue that we need to consider, that these kids are out there, and then, so that's, you know, even for high school kids that are not varsity level athletes, you're putting them on a varsity team, and some people will say, oh, but they're not going to play. Because we have, I think, maybe 26 and 30 kids on the boys and girls teams, and the coaches have said, or at least one coach has said, only 15 of you basically are going to play. The rest of you are going to sit on the bench for the season. So, okay, they're fine. They're going to be a part of the team. We're inclusive. We're including them. But they're practicing with the kids. And that's where accidents also happen and kids can get hurt because they don't know how to play the game. So a kid who knows how to play the game has expectations about what's going to happen. And a kid who doesn't know how to play at the varsity level is either going to get in the way or do something that's not conducive to safe play. And I think that's the biggest issue that you need to consider, and that these kids should not be out on the field. Another issue I think we need to consider, which you brought up, was these 7th and 8th graders playing on a varsity team. They're not built for it yet. They're not physically mature enough to be out there on a field with sometimes 18-year-olds. So they're up against these players, and even if they have the skills, they don't have the physical capacity to be playing. So we've tested them up, but what does that mean? We've tested them up so that, yes, they could play JV, but we're automatically putting them on a varsity team. So I think it's not fair to the high school athletes that you're pulling up these kids just to put them on the team to be inclusive, that they could play modified. So I think the coaches and the athletic director need to say this is a high school team, and unless you are an elite athlete who's so exceptional that you could play at that level, then yes, you test up and you play on that team. But I think that's the only reason that you should be pulling these kids up. So, and in terms of being inclusive and having these kids on the team, I think another thing I feel I need to bring up, because my oldest son, who's 25, the person we said a moment of silence for was one of his friends. And I don't think we take a strong enough stance in high school to say something's wrong here, and we can't just say, okay, we're going to be inclusive and we're going to let you be on a team. We need to have strict policies and we need to stand by them. So instead of saying, yes, we're going to like hug and be inclusive, we need to say, if you're caught using drugs and not following the code of conduct, we need to follow our code of conduct and say, I'm sorry, but you cannot be on the team anymore. But I've seen in the last year that there are students who have been caught using drugs, and then a week or two later they're out on the field because they're good athletes and we need them. So I think that's the wrong message that we're sending to our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any?
I didn't want to go to the mic.
You have to.
I don't like mics. So I totally agree with Marie, and I agree with Laura. I purposely don't have my daughter, who is a 7th grader and a very good soccer player, playing because I do not agree with the safety issue. I mean, size-wise, I cannot see her playing against a senior. And there's juniors and seniors that are like double her size. I don't think that any of the 7th and 8th graders should have been given an option. So we were told that they were given an option to either play on modified or to go to varsity. I think they should have been told they needed to either drop down to modified or they couldn't play that year. I think that would have been the right thing to have done. Let me see what else I wanted to say. Well, one of the things I think, too, is that a lot of these, I'm talking about the girls because my daughter's on the soccer team, the girls' team. She, sees some kids that don't get to or don't go to practice but still get to play. I'm not sure how it's going to work this year, but that's how it was last year. Some kids that were not as good as an athlete were given chances to play because they were seniors. But they don't show up to practice, and I don't think that's teaching them the right thing, that everybody gets to play. I try to teach her that you come, you work hard, you get play time. But if you don't go, that doesn't mean you get to play anyway. So I don't think that's really teaching them anything, and I don't think it's developing the program. I want my kid playing with kids who know about the sport. I don't want them playing with, you want to play soccer, okay, you can play this year. And I don't think they're learning anything from it, and I don't think that's developing the program at all. There are some kids that possibly want to play soccer in college, and I don't think this is going to develop them for it. That's why I take my daughters elsewhere besides just playing at Haldane, because I don't think that it's giving them the chance and the things that they need in order to be able to play college soccer if they want to. So I think that's something that we need to consider going forward in the program, because I still have another daughter coming up, and I want to see the program grow and not continue the way it's been for the past, I would say now this is my daughter's 3rd year. So it's unfortunate that the JV team got cut or that there weren't enough girls, because honestly, I think sometimes people want their kid to play on varsity, and because they want to play on varsity, they'll put them there, where really they should remain on JV, have a lot of play time to develop themselves, instead of just saying, well, I'm just going to be on varsity because I'm just going to, be a varsity player, and they just sit the bench. That's not really benefiting anybody. Like these modified girls on the team, what benefit are they getting? These girls that should have been on modified, 7th and 8th graders, they're not developing their skills. They're just going to be sitting on the bench, watching everybody else, and again, it's like a safety issue, and it's not really helping them, and it's not helping the girls that should be playing JV and varsity. The older girls that should be on the varsity team, it doesn't help them at all either. So I think that we definitely should make changes. If this year, that would be great, but at least for the following year. So.
Thanks.
Can I ask you, Dana,
What was whose decision is it to say
was this a coach's decision? Was this an athletic department decision to say that this was the right idea to
A
do?
few years back.
Well, no, we don't have a JV, we're not going to do a JV team, and we're going to let kids choose. And like the current situation, who makes that decision?
That was actually a decision that was made by the athletic department, but we've also had conversations about that decision. That's
Well,
occurred.
the athletic department really was driven by conversations that they've heard that can't have cuts, and I guess prior boards had talked about this, and I think there's confusion about at what level those cuts were supposed to happen at. And that's why I brought it up at the retreat.
But I have to be clear, though, that when that philosophy shifted, it was clear that if we didn't have to cut at any stage, that we wouldn't. So I think that right now we have a different philosophy, and people are sharing different ideas, and that's where we are now in this moment in time.
Well, for someone who's been on the board for a long time, I mean, I don't recall any of the. I recall the modified, no cuts are modified. That was a conversation, but
That's the
maybe
all I
these were
remember,
side conversations with certain members, with the superintendent. But there was never a board conversation of no cuts on varsity JV. I do remember the modified conversation. That was a while ago.
It was about
But-
3.5 years ago.
Well, that
was
wasn't.
the year.
There might have been a conversation because that was far from my. I mean, maybe I'm not remembering it, but I don't remember the board setting off a no cut policy. But again, I could be wrong, but I don't recall that.
It sounds like to me it doesn't really matter. What matters is that, I mean, I'm hearing stuff that I find pretty concerning, actually, that 7th and 8th graders are playing on a varsity team. That's concerning to me. That kids aren't being cut at all. I think that's concerning. That we have safety issues is concerning. The social emotional issues to me are concerning. That there's not a clear philosophy across sports, that some sports do one thing, some sports do another thing. I find that concerning. So it sounds like it sounds like this unfortunate state of affairs has brought up some issues that we need to address.
So actually, one of the things I said a second ago is I want to see the policy implemented consistently across the sports. But then hearing Marie talk, there's some sports where it would be perfectly appropriate for a really skilled athlete to play on a varsity team. And I'm thinking cross country and track in particular, right? And we've had some tremendously successful middle schoolers who have grown into amazing runners. And so to say, like, those 7th and 8th graders, in my opinion, to say those 7th and 8th graders couldn't have run cross country when it's a small team, it's not a contact sport. I mean, I guess there is some judgment that needs to go into it. But I think that now the board's consensus really is like cutting is fine. And in fact, we hear kids talk all the time about how they're too busy, and
I just find it.
There's
just no
I
reason.
think it
There's
should
plenty
be a
of stuff to do
philosophy.
here.
I don't see other school districts reaching out to the middle school students to be on the varsity teams. I could see, without really knowing the history, I could see that the history was there was a time when they needed athletes, so they went to the middle school. But if that's not a need, it shouldn't. It should be. To me, it shouldn't even be an option. I mean,
Or
what's
the
the
philosophy
philosophy of the school? It's the philosophy of the school like, oh, we'd have a better record if we let these 3 8th graders play. I don't think that should be our philosophy. If we can fill a team with the high school athletes, then that's it. And then if in an extreme case where we say, you know what, we can't field a team this year in XYZ sport, should we go to the middle school in an extreme case? But if you can fill a team with the high school, why are you going to the middle school? Right. With the exception of, if you say, you have someone that could be an NBA player one day, which, I don't see.
I don't know, but I also think that I think there needs to be room for an exception, like Peggy's talking about. Different sports have different needs. But I think even if the 8th grader can hang on with the seniors running track because there's no contact, I will say again, I feel like there's social emotional issues that eighth grader is in the locker room with those 18-year-olds and on the bus with them. And
put Siobhan
I
on
don't
the
know.
spot.
I mean, I think that there needs to be some a wait for that too.
Although, going back to testing up, the philosophy used to be that sometimes there is that exceptional athlete in
That's what I'm saying. There should
7th
be
or
room
8th
for an
grade.
exception, but it should not be the rule. It should
Right.
be a super
We shouldn't be
exception.
filling a team up with a whole bunch of girls who tested up just because now they have no place to go. That's not the philosophy that I hold. The philosophy is, yes, we've had tremendous athletes that Siobhan's daughters have played from 7th and 8th grade. They're exceptional athletes. And we shouldn't be punishing those kids either, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There has to be an equal balance here, and we have to realize what it is that we want to do moving forward and just stick with it. We shouldn't be testing kids up just to fill teams.
I'd be curious to find out. I'd be curious again because it's not about. Is that a normal how many of the districts that we play? How many of them are playing middle schoolers on the varsity level?
I'm going to tell you what happened this weekend. Boys varsity soccer played at a tournament in Brewster. We played Pauling. Pauling is in a similar situation as we are. However, they maintained a JV and a varsity squad. They have 12 kids on a JV team and 14 on a varsity. They have to pull up JV kids to play for varsity each game. We don't want to find ourselves in that situation either, because that's not a healthy situation to be in either. You either have the numbers or you don't. That's just...
Is there, when we don't have enough numbers for a team, are there other options for that JV group? Can we merge with a different school for the year? Can we still have a group of kids that practice and play practices and maybe play against each other or play against the varsity team at Haldane or something? Is there ways to keep those kids involved in a JV setting without saying no team whatsoever?
If you have a school that's in the same predicament that you are. But if a school has their own team, and if they fielded a team, they're not going to accept others.
Right.
I think you have to go to the mic.
It's for the camera.
I think if you planned early, I think that's one of the biggest problems. You could probably do that. There are schools that have similar, and 7th, 8th, and 9th graders play 9th grade teams, because a lot of the bigger schools we play, then you can keep the kids. But I think the biggest thing, which I agree with you, it needs to be across the board. I think you have to make a decision and stick by it. Because saying it's okay for one and not for the other, I would have been fine with that too. I have kids, sports mean a lot to my children, but I'm a rule follower. And I think, I always say that. And I have a problem with the inconsistency of people not following rules. And I don't feel like they're clearly laid out. I think they need to be more clear. And it would go a lot more smooth if it was. But I also think, this year alone, you had kids that didn't have their paperwork in. You want to play. They had girls 8 days into supposedly a tryout, still without their paperwork. They were still opted to play on that team. How serious are you if you don't have your paperwork in? That shouldn't even be a discussion.
I didn't even think you could be at practice until you had your paperwork.
No, they are. They're sitting there without their, and that's 8 days in. You have all summer, and I honestly think this needs to be addressed. Why can't this be done in June? And then you would know if you have numbers, and if you can't, put the money towards a modified team.
I've asked this question, honestly, because I feel like the fall sport, which is mostly soccer, gets shafted all the time. And maybe it's just because I'm partial to that because my son plays, but I was told that it's hard to come up with numbers so early on because we have kids moving in.
Right.
But there's got to be a better plan. I completely agree.
I'm sorry, if a coach can't, after 5 days into a tryout, tell a kid, I'm sorry, you weren't serious enough. Maybe next year. I think that's a shame. If a coach can at that stage tell, I mean, that's clear cut. If you show up for a job and you're not ready to work 5 days in, you don't have your job. Right. I mean, we have to teach them, and I truly think having more, everyone, the school will have more respect. I mean, just stand by it. And that's even the code of conduct I want to bring up. We've asked you this, what exactly are the consequences if somebody goes against, because I want my kids to know. I want them to know what is exactly clear cut will happen if you do X, Y, and Z. And we've discussed this, and there is no clear explanation. And I think that has to be addressed.
Well, I would love to invite you to be part of the Code of Conduct Committee, because I think we need to hear your voice on it. Yep.
We really do.
Okay, so we'll let you know when we're going to meet,
But-
and we'll invite you in.
And I don't want to let this go, that what Marie said about drinking and drugs and all those things and those kids getting back on the court. We need to have very, very clear rules about what's allowed and what's not allowed, because we are sending a bad, bad message to all of those kids if we're letting that happen.
I mean, I would assume if something like that happened, I mean, I'm from Texas where they have really strict rules about this kind of thing, but in Texas, if that happens, you can't play for the whole year. That doesn't happen at all. That doesn't happen. I mean, that just seems, that's bewildering. If it's really, I don't disbelieve you, but I don't know the facts.
Started this whole conversation.
What?
That is very stunning to me.
It would deter a lot of kids from.
It absolutely would.
No, I mean, absolutely, that needs to go into a rule book,
Isn't it
like
in-
from extra.
No, the problem is that it's in the rule book, it's just not followed.
I don't know if that's the case, so I think
If you read the code of conduct, it truly doesn't really tell you
Anything.
Oh, wait, no, we had a
We had
conversation
this-
about this.
We're working on.
And Dr. Bowers was talking about how, tell me if I'm wrong, but that the specific consequences are not there for a reason, so that you can be contextual with the kid in front of you. Is that correct?
yes, it is
So
correct.
that the kid you can deal with each kid on an individual basis and say, okay, this is what's going on in this kid's life, this is da-da-da-da-da, and then I'm going to make this determination about your punishment or your consequence, so that it's not cut and dry. That's on purpose, right?
Yes, what we have, the language that we have, which I would say the majority of school districts in New York State have, comes directly out of the SAVE legislation, which happened probably 10 to 12 years ago, where it gives the list of the consequences that schools are allowed to administer based on the circumstances. And there are times I can tell you that I don't think that if in a discipline situation, I can tell you there's very few things that are just black and white, and there's many shades of gray, because you're talking about kids. You're talking about kids and some of the experiences they have outside school or even inside school. It depends on the circumstance. But I can tell you, if a student goes through a superintendent's hearing, there's consistency. If it doesn't warrant a superintendent's hearing, that's another story.
I think we've had these conversations a couple of times, and on our agenda, we discussed the Parent University. That's coming up in October, and this is where those conversations will continue along with the Code of Conduct. And it's no longer going to be called an athletic handbook. It's going to be, right, it's going to be an extracurricular.
Yep.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's
handbook.
But I do think there should be very clear consequences for drugs and alcohol
I agree.
on those,
What, within the handbook?
in the extracurricular
Well, we'll have to talk
handbook.
about that with the committee, but there's a lot of different camps of thought in that.
Who deals with that discipline? Is that a coach's call, or does it go to the athletic director, or does it go to you?
It depends on what it is. If it's something that happens, a minor incident in the team, it would be the coach. But if it's something that's a school-related issue, drugs and alcohol, it always goes to the principal. And then if it warrants it, it goes to the superintendent's hearing.
There is no minor incident with drugs and alcohol. It is illegal.
But I'm guessing that the idea is to not completely push kids outside of this. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can see why you're hesitant to. But anyway, I mean, I don't disagree, but I do also see the other side, that if their kid's in trouble and you take away everything, then are you pushing them completely outside of a sphere where they're engaged in healthy activities? But anyway, I'm not on that committee, so I'll shut up. But I'm not going to get on it. So, the board is in favor of cutting on teams.
Okay.
And I
I'm hearing
think
that.
The modified level.
I think that what we need to do is have Chris
up with a
craft
plan.
some language and some information that will come to you.
I mean, what are we going to do when 50 kids come out at the modified level?
Has that ever happened, though? Like, can we?
It could. I mean, if you start advertising that we're not going to cut for modified.
I think everybody knows you don't cut for modified.
Oh,
basically.
there's been cuts.
Dictated.
Yeah, there's been
That's
cuts
where
for
I
I
basketball.
thought it was New York State dictated that you couldn't cut on modified.
But then I think.
I think we would have to commit. I mean, that's the balance. If we're going to say no cuts on modified, everybody's welcome, this is an opportunity for kids to learn and play and explore and get better or not, then we have to be willing to pay for the appropriate number of coaches. And if it's a big team, like Dr. Bauer said, it might be a split up of Team A, Team B. Maybe they don't play as much, whatever. But I think we have to support it financially.
I think it comes down to making the decision and just, as well, sticking with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't leave loopholes.
So it sounds like we need to, I mean, I feel like all of us are kind of leaning in a similar direction. And some next steps would be to get the athletic director in on the conversation.
Yep. And we'll have to craft some language, and that will be something that we come back to you with.
And in the meantime, is there anything we want to do in the moment to deal with this soccer situation?
I think we have to have a conversation about that.
I think it's a little too late. We're into the season.
It's too late. It's just the way it
kids
is.
are in danger. I mean,
They're not playing.
They are playing.
But they're playing at
Are they?
practice.
They're practicing. There's serious injuries during practice. I can show you the medical records. So it is a danger right now. And modified has not started yet. So
Tomorrow.
we're not into
Yeah.
the season so much.
I do think it's hard, though. These
It is
kids have-
hard.
These
It
kids
is
have been
hard.
practicing and part of a team and has a uniform, I think.
Bare minimum, though, there should be no 7th or 8th graders on that varsity team. If some of the 9th and 10th graders are, I mean, bare minimum, we shouldn't have any 7th or 8th graders on the varsity.
That's,
right? I mean, don't you think?
boys don't, girls do.
I think we need to bring Chris into this conversation.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's not really, we're not expert, I mean, I think, yeah.
Is soccer the only one that we have this issue with? Just girls
And
soccer
it
at this
happens
point?
it seems to be happening more often, and
But
that's why.
this season, this particular, fall 2017, do we have it with any of the other sports, Volleyball,
No,
boys soccer?
I don't.
Football, they're allowed to
that-
play modified in 9th grade,
Right, and you're not allowed on soccer.
so that's also part of the issue. Where soccer used to be able to play modified in 9th grade.
Okay, well, this seems to be like there's something that needs to happen in the
I think we need to.
short term.
We need to pull Chris
And you
into
need
the
to pull
conversation.
Chris into the conversation.
Yes.
Quickly.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, continuing on, demographic study. We were talking about finalizing our discussion and decide if that's something we're moving forward with at this point, or if we're going to hold off. And I know there were kind of two different ideas of how we should proceed.
What were the two different ideas? I must have a memory. I do worry that I
I
have
think I
dementia.
was one of the ones that said maybe we should put this towards a different study, if need be, in terms of buildings and grounds right now. But if we felt that demographics is something that we have to do.
So what in particular, I'm sorry, I really can't remember.
The
What was?
heating. Laura was talking about it.
To
in
have
a deeper heating survey, right?
Right.
A more
Pipe survey.
detailed.
Well, except that, I guess my question would be, and do our own staff have the expert, like, so actually my memory of the conversation now is that if you go back a few years, there already was a report several years ago that mentioned that the heating system, the pipes were at a tipping point.
Yes.
So if that exists and it's multiple years old, I don't think we would need another one, but I don't
And
want
we are
to.
in the process of unearthing that.
Okay, like if we had that, I mean, even though I know it would be good to have a more recent one, I'm not sure what it would get us.
I'm in agreement with you. I feel like if we have the study that's already
Right. We have to get the study.
detailed.
If we can find the study and it has the details, then yes. But if not, then we actually, Laura's right, we absolutely have to have it. We have to
I mean,
have
if we
an
don't
expert
have it,
opinion.
I'm sure the company that performed the study would.
Yeah.
Still have
We're
it?
in the process.
I mean, we should be able to find that.
But how old is that study?
10 years, I
10
think.
years, so a lot could have happened in 10 years.
Well,
it
it's,
probably wouldn't have
make
gotten
it
better.
worse.
But at 10 years ago,
Exactly.
yeah, at 10 years ago, at 10 years ago, it said they needed to be replaced. I mean, I guess the only thing we think is possible is we need something
We're not really sure
more.
exactly the wording that was in that report from
Well,
10
then
years
let's
ago, so
just
that's
wait and
why I
see it.
wanted to see that. And I guess the demographic study is a great idea. I guess what I was trying to focus on is not just the pipes. If there are other
I see what you're
items
saying.
that are pertaining to buildings and grounds that we're going to need, additional details and fundings for, maybe demographics is something we could put on the back burner. It's just something that I'm throwing out there.
Well, even we're not replacing every single pipe, right? So what is damaged
We're
10
not
years ago?
replacing any pipes. It would be putting a new system in. So we would take the present piping system out of action, and then we would be putting in a new piping system.
We would be getting away from the steam system.
Oh, so then it doesn't matter if there's damage in different places at this point.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to figure out is how long will the present piping system continue to heat this building? And from what we've heard so far from the experts, it's just a matter of time before there's something that happens that makes it impossible to heat the building. We have the new burners, and we have the boilers that are in about 10 years ago, so it's not the creation of heat, it's the delivery of heat.
Well, I mean, the demographic study, we're talking about $4,800, $5,000, right? That we've kind of set aside for an additional study, right? So we can hang tight for a little bit and see if we can find the other study that we're looking for and see if it gives us enough information or if we need more information. Like, we don't have to pull the trigger on this demographic study tonight, right? We could do it mid-year if we wanted to. I do think it will affect our tuitioning of students conversation. And I think it will affect our big picture down the line conversation about funding. And I'm assuming that's what Dr. Bowers, you would like to have, is that information so that we can talk about, do we need more teachers? Should we expect more ELL students? Like, it is kind of a budgetary conversation. But I think it would be fine to hang on and see if we get everything we need from the current study that we've already done before we pull the trigger on this.
Laura, are there particular things, you know so much more about building and grounds than I do, but when you say this old study comes up and it shows what we think it says, which is that the pipe delivery, the heating delivery system needs to be replaced. Are you thinking that, and we also have then the survey, the building survey that the state did 2 years ago. Are you thinking that there's actually may really be a need to have a different kind of more in-depth survey, like inspection, some other kind of inspection that's going to give us important information?
I mean, I think it will reinforce what's there. We actually took a building tour tonight, right before this meeting, and there's definitely items that need to be addressed, and
And you think that that's an important part of a new report could be an important part of communicating to the
I
public.
think communicating to the public, coming from somebody has significant expertise, to me, but I may not be.
But isn't that the building condition survey? Don't we get those?
That's part of that survey. I don't think the pipes were part of that survey.
Right.
So that's what
Well, I think there was concern raised about the pipe and the piping system, but it was something else, yeah.
Right.
But it's also anything that within the district, I mean, there are many things on a building condition survey that will just never be addressed because it's physically impossible to do what you do. But something like the heating system, that takes priority.
But those other things that Laura's thinking might be there for us to address, are those on the building condition survey?
The windows were on the survey, from what I remembered.
Yes.
And the sills.
And the sills, yep, and the water
And
that's,
the water damage
Yep.
was on the survey.
bathrooms.
Bathrooms were on the survey. The only thing are these pipes.
That was the only thing that was hidden, that was not on the survey.
Right.
So so are you feeling like a different type of survey would be
Well,
valuable?
no. At our buildings and grounds meetings last year, there was this survey of our infrastructure, our piping infrastructure, that was conducted, and I don't know the exact. I want to say it was about 10 years ago. So there was obviously concern about the 1938 pipes 10 years ago.
Right.
But we need to find that report so we
Right.
can see where we were 10 years ago and,
But if you got that report, do you feel like I guess I'm asking, do you need something in addition to that? Are you suggesting we do something in addition to that report if we can
I
find
think
it?
if we find that report and the report says, hey, yeah, the pipes were failing 10 years ago, there's no doubt in my mind that the pipes are truly failing.
Okay, so you're not looking for anything additional. You're looking just for some a little bit more verification
Right.
on the heating issue.
Right.
So if we can
we
get
just need
that
to wait and
through the survey that was done 10 years ago, you'd be comfortable.
Right. And I think, as conversations continue to happen at the B&G and with the focus group, I think that's something that's going to come up. It's going to, surface that, hey, what's wrong with the pipes? So we kind of want to have the backup. That's just what I'm
Okay.
saying.
So let's find the survey.
Okay, continuing on, the 2-hour delay program for students in the 17-18 school year will be run exactly like it was last year. We will have an opportunity for parents to drop off their children in the morning, and there will be a program as there was last year. So a letter will be going out soon. If you would like your child to be part of it, let us know, and we will go from there.
And the only difference, Dr. Bauer, that it's not just Fridays anymore, right? It's now each day of the week gets its own equal
Yes.
opportunity for the 2-hour delay.
Right,
And the reasoning was
that there are certain things with 2-hour delays, there are certain classes that are missed. Instead of missing the same class over and over again, if we spread it out through the week, we won't have that happen.
So with the block schedules for high school, that helped.
Okay, we had an administrative retreat, August 23rd, 24th, and 25th, with all our administrators. We held it at Boscobel this year and did a lot of planning. We also planned our superintendent's conference day, where the conference day is, the focus of the conference day is culture and the culture building that will happen within our district. So I think the conference day, everybody left happy, hopefully. And I think it was a good day, and so we had 3 days of very long conversations about what we anticipate for the year and what our aspirations are for the year. On August 30th, we also had our new teacher induction program, and we had a series of new educators that came in and learned a little bit about Haldane, went on a tour, learned philosophies, our thinking, our instructional practices. So that was very positive. We also had our superintendent's conference day last Friday on September the 1st, and we have our opening day today, as you know. A couple of dates for you to think about. The Board of Education workshop meeting for Tuesday, September 19th. We will be recognizing the officers of the Haldane PTA, the Foundation, and the Sports Boosters Club. We will also be hearing about our special ed audit that occurred last year and the findings from the special ed audit. We are entering year 3 of our strategic plan, and we will have our parent focus group that helped us to create our strategic plan. We will be inviting the parent group in. Paul Yellen will be joining us from the Yellen Center for Mind, Brain, and Education, who is helping us create our learner profiles. And we thought that we would invite the people who created the strategic plan in to hear where we are as far as the creation of the learner profiles. And so anybody who would like to join us for that meeting is welcome, but we will definitely, we will have special invitations going out to the focus group and also to the group of parents that run the Learning Differences Committee. We will invite them as well as anybody else that would like to be part of that. Okay, you will be hearing more information about an upcoming parent university. Some of the concerns that we have and some of the concerns that parents have shared with us tonight are also concerns of ours. We want to make sure that we're growing students that are healthy and happy and make good choices, whether they're here in Haldane now or if it's 5 years from now after they've graduated. So that's a conversation that we will have. We will be showing the movie, we anticipate, I should say, we haven't secured it yet, Screenagers, that really talks about the trends with teenagers and the use of screen time and some of the issues that have come from that. We will also have conversations about drug and alcohol use and the things that we can do as a school community and a parent community to stem that. We will also have copies of the books, a number of copies of Raising a Drug-Free Kid for parents to read.
And when is that going to be?
We haven't set the date yet.
Okay.
We anticipate that it will probably be November or early December.
And the idea is to have one during the academic year?
Well,
to
this
give
is
it a
our
try?
first,
If you
yes.
give it a try.
And then we'll see what the parent community feels. Our Building and Grounds Committee, we have a number of meetings that are scheduled during our board work session times throughout the school year, and we will be talking about the upcoming potential bond referendum. And so there will be dates that will be posted. As far as the board workshop dates, we will probably have at least one meeting outside the board workshop dates for the bond referendum, but it's something that we invite people to come in and take part in the conversation. We have a temporary 3-month assignments that I want to share with you. As you know, Michael Twardy has moved to the Garrison School District, and we've had a number of our employees step up and will be stepping into 3-month temporary assignments for facilities, maintenance, and transportation until we decide on what our next steps are as we appoint a new director of facilities and transportation. So far I have to give them a lot of accolades. They have gone way above and beyond to make sure that we opened the school as in the best possible ways that we could. So we thank them for their time. And the Haldane, the 17-18 school calendar has been emailed to parents, and it's been posted on the website. We are actually have copies at the printer, so if you would like a hard copy, we do have some that were given to the board, but this was just printed from our printers. We actually have a bound copy that will get to you when they come in. They'll be available in the offices of all the 3 schools, and if you like one that is bound and just as pretty as this one, you can pick it up. So, and that's my report tonight.
Great. Thank you. Is there any communication from the public? Any additional comments? Okay. Moving on to consent agenda minutes. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Okay. These are the minutes of the Board of Ed meeting held on August 17th. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Information reports. These, I had I'll ask for a motion and then talk. May I have a motion?
Oh, we're not.
Oh, these aren't being approved. Okay, this is what I had to ask. At our retreat, we spoke about the possibility of having to, I'm going to talk about this later on in the meeting, but there's a possibility that we're going to move away from business in the workshop meetings, as much business as possible. Is it going to be a problem if we approve these the following business meeting? No? Oh, good. Okay. All right. So these are here just for our viewing, and I guess for this next meeting, we'll keep it in this.
Do you want to do that so that these are approved in October?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
If,
at the business meeting, you're going to be approving and receiving information. It'll just be on the
right.
that
Right.
cycle.
Right.
That's fine.
That works. Okay. Good.
They'll just be in
Different
parts
parts.
of the agenda. Okay. Easy
Okay.
enough.
Thanks. Okay. Consent agenda financial. May I have a motion?
Second?
Okay. Is there any discussion here? There's a couple of items. We're accepting some donations.
Yeah, I was actually wondering, Dr. Bowers, if you could just share a little bit about the school website, final site, with the public.
So the board has asked us to continue to redevelop our website, and we've looked at a number of companies, professional companies, that can come in and help us do something more advanced than what we were able to do internally. We just don't have the manpower and the expertise to bring it to the level that we would like to see it. So we looked at a number of different companies. Final Site is the company that we, after reviewing a number of the websites that they have created for districts in the region, we felt that they were the ones that would best suit our needs. Since that time, we actually have we've had the opportunity to learn more about the Final Site company. It's actually available through the RIC.
I know, I saw that. I didn't remember that, so that's new.
Right.
Okay.
So we asked the RIC to send information on it, and actually it is a little more expensive going through the RIC if you look at all the different components that get layered on it. But the other piece is that we'll get state aid back the following year. So this is something that they redevelop the website and then they keep it up on an annual basis. There's a slightly lower charge than we would pay if we worked with the company directly from the RIC, because they've decreased what they're charging by $1,000. Where are we? Are we still about 33 cents on the dollar?
34.
Yep, so it will actually be up by about $8,000 if we take this and including the annual fee and run it through the RIC. So that's another option for us.
And one of the things I know that we've had a brief discussion about recently, but I want to make sure that it's clear to the public, is that this company will create an ADA compliant, a 508 compliant website.
Correct.
It will meet all the federal regulations for having an accessible website, which, for really good reasons, is not something we can do on our own.
Right.
And it's, yeah, I mean, I think it's critically important.
Yep. The website will be able to be translated into different languages, which, as we've been discussing, is probably more important than ever for us now. And so that will be an opportunity. And it will be aesthetically more pleasing. Hopefully, we can navigate through it on a much easier basis than we have in the past. And it won't be as clunky and won't be as deep. So those are the options.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments?
Can I ask one more question about this
Sure.
global football thing? So I had sent an email asking for more information about the safety of it for kids of this age, and I still haven't seen anything that says kids, because it's basically 180 pounds is the minimum amount I see. Don't we have a lot of kids that are under 180 pounds? And has there ever been any research that this is safe for those kids?
So it's my understanding that we're the second high school in the nation
Which
that
is
has
why
one
I'm
of
asking
these,
this
yeah.
question.
I can tell you that the work that has come from our coaches is very positive and productive. I don't know if that specific question was asked, though, and I will have it.
I sent an email, and this is what Chris responded and what Brian responded, but I don't have a specific answer to, is this appropriate for kids of this age and size?
Is there a weight? Yeah, is there a weight
And
limit?
I read everything, and the only thing I can see is 180 pounds.
We'll call
We
the
have a lot of
company.
kids that are
The,
under
uh,
180 pounds.
I missed that. I don't think, did you specifically ask for weight and size? Because I didn't see that.
I said of kids this age.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So I think so we will ask, we can get specifics for weight and size.
I just want to be sure that they're safe, you know? It seems to me that if they use this in college and professional football, we're talking kids that are potentially 130, 140 pounds. That's a lot smaller.
Yeah, well, we'll get that answered for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, did you have another
Well,
comment?
I'm going to say this. I appreciate that. I know, Chris, like, as a board, we went to, we thought really carefully about our fundraising policy, and I appreciate that Chris is really communicating this to the coaches, and that I hope that, we want everyone in the district to understand that the board has a strong philosophy about how donations should be made to the school district.
And it's not just a philosophy, it's almost,
Right.
It's
it's a policy, and it's a policy.
It's now a policy. But the policy is reflecting, I guess, our philosophy, sort of.
Right,
we've
and
thought carefully
also
about this.
audits, and, it all is intertwined. So it's not that, I don't think anybody is trying to give anybody a hard time. I
Right.
think we're just trying to say that things need to be done correctly, and there really isn't a problem
Right.
with that. Okay, so all those in favor? Aye.
Well, are we going to get more information about the football part?
You want to hold off on
Should
approving
we
it until you
just take
we
number
get that
7
answer?
off?
Well, I mean, are you guys comfortable with what
I'm
you've read?
comfortable after I've read that
I haven't
The
gotten
safety.
any information on it, so I don't.
it's here.
Whatever you get.
The safety, player
Oh,
safety
on
and
the thing,
priority.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
on there.
I'm confident that we wouldn't be using a piece of equipment that would cause more harm than good. As I mentioned, I had the opportunity to watch a little bit of the football practice, and like I said, I have zero expertise in this field, but to me, hitting the dummy over and over again versus hitting each other
Right.
seemed to me that it made a little bit more sense in terms of safety. They're, you know,
And the coach clearly says that he feels
He believes, yes.
that the team is improving and maintaining healthier tackling techniques. So, like, that's good enough for me to approve this, but I do think that the detailed information that you're asking for is important for us to have.
Okay, so we'll do that.
so
With that being the caveat.
Are you abstaining?
Can I abstain from the one piece, from the one football part?
No.
If we pull it out,
Oh, yeah, only if the board pulls that out.
pull it out and then do it.
All right, I'll just abstain from this whole thing. It won't make one bit of difference.
Okay.
But I'd like to see more.
Okay.
And I agree, I trust them, but I'm not entirely sure there's enough. I'm not sure I want our boys being the guinea pigs.
Yep. Okay.
okay. I don't, consent agenda personnel.
Motion? Second.
Okay. Any questions, discussions?
I just love seeing Haldane kids come back. I mean, I guess he's been here for a while, but it's nice to see that.
Sure. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. There's unfinished business. I sent out an email with some dates for the board retreat, part 2. Did everybody? No. You didn't get it, Evan?
I don't think I have that.
Yeah, you did. You responded that all the dates worked for
Oh.
you. Jen and Peggy, October 11th was the only date that didn't work. The dates were October 2nd, 4th, or 10th from 6 to 9.
Can we do the 10th? Can we just state a personal preference and doesn't matter to anybody?
It doesn't matter to me. I don't.
If it doesn't matter to anybody? Great.
Okay.
Fine.
October 10th, 6 to 9. Is this going to be, do we want to go back to Winter Hill? Do we want to? We can't.
They allowed us to come twice.
Oh, they do.
Okay.
But I have to double check to make sure that since we didn't give them the date, that that date is still available.
Otherwise, we can do it here in maybe the makerspace.
Oh, yeah, that would be fine.
I'm okay with it. Okay, we'll decide on
When you say the makerspace, is the makerspace the downstairs or the upstairs?
the
The
upstairs.
upstairs. Okay, yeah, I like that room. Sorry, better than the downstairs room.
Okay, good. Any communication from the public? Nobody else? Okay. Moving on to new business. CSE.
Okay, so item 1 is the CSE CPSE recommendations. And the recommended action is that the Board of Education approves the recommendations of the Committee on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as indicated.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay, and the next item is the appointment of board member representatives to district committees. The recommended action is the Board of Education appoints the representatives to district committees for 2017-18 as stated below. There is a chart in board docs that shows Audit Committee with Evan Schwartz and Margaret Parr, which you already agreed to. Buildings and Grounds would be Laura Hammond and Jen Daly. Code of Conduct would be Margaret Parr. LMC, HFA, Evan Schwartz and Jen Daly. PTA would be Jen Daly. Health and safety would be Peggy Clements, technology would be Peggy Clements, and wellness would be Evan Schwartz.
Okay. May I get a motion?
Motion? Second.
All those in favor?
Wait,
Oh.
I just want to make note, the PTA is not really a district committee.
That's right.
It's, we added on here as something, a group that we think it's important for us to stay connected to, but it is not technically a district committee.
And so we pulled all those off last year on the official form.
On the official forms, we pulled off the booster clubs and the PTA, but the PTA kind of has a different,
But I do think it shouldn't be on this list, though.
it is not a district committee.
It's not a district committee, that's correct.
Okay. So,
So we can shadow
we
that.
can,
We'll gray that. It
We'll-
still exists. I will still be there, connected to them, but.
are we okay approving it with the PTA?
It's okay to still approve it
Okay.
as is.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, changes to Board of Ed workshop. We started this conversation at the board retreat where we thought the format should change a little bit for workshops where we can actually talk and discuss in more of a roundtable discussion rather than bringing business into the workshop meetings and conducting it a little bit different. And we thought maybe we can give it a try and see how it goes. And maybe not have it in this room, have it in a room that's more conducive to working together at a table, at a round table. And I think we came up with the library, middle school, high school library as a possibility. Or the maker space. However, we're not sure the maker space has enough room for an audience.
For our fans.
So, and we're going to try and take out as much business as possible. Not that we held ourselves to saying that no business will be conducted at the workshop meetings, but as much business as possible we were going to try to eliminate, as well as Dr. Bauer's superintendent reports. So we can actually have discussions about some of the topics that we've come up with at a roundtable. I don't know if you want to share anything else about what workshop meetings look like.
So this would be an opportunity for us to sit and have conversations amongst each other to a deeper level than we do in something similar to this. We are actually on the dais and we're actually presenting information, and although we do have interchange, it's not roll up your sleeves and dig in. And I think with the building and grounds, we need to roll up our sleeves and dig in.
There'll still be open meetings because all of our meetings are open
certainly will
meetings.
be.
And I have to say, sitting on this side, I feel so different. Did you feel that way? Like, I wouldn't have guessed that the idea of having a round table makes a difference, but it's like I can see you guys, I mean, I can see the whole board and Dr. Bowers, and that makes a really big difference, I think. And so while we think space, it's not the most important thing. I think the most important thing is that we have this intention and a plan and a commitment to doing it. But I like the idea of us being in a different space and really acknowledging the fact that it's a meeting for us to work together. So
It's
whoever's
a meeting in public as opposed to a public meeting, and so
Yes, a
that
meeting.
makes
And you're all still invited.
everybody can still come.
Just, it'll be a different location. And we're going to see how it goes. We're going to try it out.
But the administrators.
We'll still
they will still give their reports.
give their
yes.
report at that meeting.
I don't usually ask questions, but I wanted to know, do you want to have those meetings video recorded?
That was another conversation we began to
started
have.
that,
At a round table, obviously, some of our heads will be to the back of the camera. I don't have a problem with that.
Every second of it. She's totally hating it. She's like,
Cecilia's
"Bye."
shaking her head right now.
Just don't put the wallpaper.
But I think it's going to open up different opportunities for us, and I don't mind having the camera to
I
back
think we should
us.
absolutely have it videoed. Absolutely. I think people count on being able to hear our conversations and our meetings from the comfort of their home, even though it's just about 70 people, but those 70 people count on it. So I think we should absolutely have it videoed, even if it's not very presentational to the camera. Sorry. Cecilia. Sure.
But even if we do it in the library, there's a way to set it up so that we're all kind of looking at each other, but still a space.
With
But if
those
not,
tables.
It's
not a
really
big deal.
what's important is that they can hear what we're saying.
And-
So, if there's some microphones in the center, you know.
Why couldn't we do a round table here? I mean, and just put a round table here.
So we want to go into a
Is
different
that-
way.
I think it was to set up a different feel, a different business versus roll up your sleeves.
Get to work business.
But if we have different tables, I'm just because the space is a big deal. We're not trying to isolate out the space. A perfect example, like next week, the next meeting is a workshop meeting, but we invited the whole world here. So, what would we do? In June, we do the workshop, that's a workshop meeting. We invite people. So it just feels like I feel like we would be moving it a lot for certain things that we do.
I think that's why we said the library, because the library would be able to hold larger audiences.
But the
And
library
that's-
wouldn't hold, if we were doing like the tenured teacher, retired teacher presentation, when really all of these seats are filled.
That's our one meeting that we get a large crowd for. I'm
All
okay.
those people will fit in the library. I think so. I mean, I don't really care one
Yeah,
way
but
or
what's
the
the
other.
point of having a meeting where you're inviting people and then we're turning our backs to them? You know what I mean? Like a
Right.
workshop meeting, if it's a workshop meeting which is designed for us to work and people are invited to come watch us work, that's one thing. But when you have a meeting where you're physically actually invited, hey, come to this meeting, we want to honor you.
I think that's a good point. I think that one of my pauses with the change was that people would feel like they weren't as welcome.
Right.
And I don't know if that's true, and I don't know if it matters, but I think it does matter in that kind of a circumstance when we are honoring the PTA leadership, the Booster Club leadership, like we're doing at next meeting. I think Evan's right. I think it would be nice for them to be able to just drive up, sit in a seat, have us look at them when we talk to them.
I mean, I think it should be almost the opposite of what we're thinking is like when we say like October, we don't really have any pressing. That's going to be a real workshop. We want to get, we want to be close, sitting close to each other. Like, so that we're going to move that meeting to the library. Like, so as opposed to saying this is the new spot, but every so often we'll move it back here. I think it should be the opposite, where every so often, October, there's nothing really pressing, because then it's going to be budget season, and it's going to be referendums, and it's going to be all this kind of, there's always going to be stuff that's, whereas, as though that's what I think it should be. I think, so October, we'll say, it's October, we got all the stuff out of the way, let's have a real workshop meeting, let's move it to the library.
I'm okay. I personally am okay with having it anywhere. I think the concept was that there's going to be a lot of discussion about buildings and grounds, and we talked about possibly having completely separate meetings, and the concept was that if we start to have workshop meetings where we can actually just work, maybe we don't need to have so many extra meetings. Where we're pulling away some business items,
Right.
and we can focus on.
No, I agree.
Right.
That's why I'm saying, like, if we say to ourselves, okay, the next workshop meeting, we really want to just focus on building its ground, so we're going to move it to the library so we can sit in a more intimate setting, as opposed to the opposite way where we say we're going to move it to the library for a more intimate setting, but but in September, right, we're going to have to do it in here. All right, this meeting, we invited all these people, right? So we have to do it here. So, June, we have to do it here. So I think it should be the opposite, where, every so often we say, you know what, let's make this a real workshop meeting and let's move it.
Why don't we,
That's just my
Or
thought.
next door. I mean, I know that.
I like
room-
what Evan's suggesting as a good step for this year. It could be an intermediate step. And we can see how it goes. Do we like being in a different space for the workshop meetings? Do we not care? Does it, it could be kind of a baby step and an assessment step.
Maybe do like the October, because September we have this thing. So in October, let's
September will
say
still be
the
here.
workshop meeting, let's move to a library. Let's try a different format in October and see how it
We'd
goes.
have to put like a sign on the door. It
And
says
post it on our website.
workshop meeting upstairs.
Location is.
Yeah,
Right.
we can decide case by case.
Yeah. Okay.
But we do want a different setup for those meetings. Right, we talked about just maybe putting 2 for the workshop meetings, even in here. We'd have 2 long tables facing each other, so it'd be like 3 and 3. Okay.
Or 4 and 4.
Or 4 and 4, yeah.
Or we'll roll in one of the round tables.
Like here and here.
So that we're actually facing each other.
No, our sides.
Sides
like,
to you.
Like, take out the middle table here and just push these 2 together.
That's why I said 4 and 4. Or we're going to have to pull the round table in. Those are the minute details. I think what we're really concerned with is trying to focus more on working together at these workshop meetings rather than, making it more business-like. Okay. Next, approval of Board of Ed workshop topics.
Okay, so the recommended action is that the Board of Education approves the topics listed below for their 2017-2018 workshop meetings. And in Board Docs, there is a list of all of the suggested topics for the workshop meetings.
Okay. So may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? One item that I thought that we kind of asked for last year that we didn't was a technology update and how Google Classroom is going to be used, and where we're at with that, and I feel like we kind of let.
Leah did do a presentation, but I don't know if that was to
That
the.
focused more on that echo thing, and we had a lot of questions, and y'all aren't going to necessarily use it. That's my memory of that.
Right. And then we said maybe we should get one to talk about. Am I recollecting that we
Every
discussed
year, I feel
Google?
like we have asked for an iPad,
Yeah.
which now seems obsolete.
Yeah.
But you're not incorrect in remembering that I feel like the board has consistently wanted to know more about what's happening with technology in the classroom and some validation that what we're doing is integrated properly and beneficial to our students. And I don't feel like we've ever been completely satisfied with what's been presented to us.
I was hoping that maybe when we talk about the website on the 20th, or do you think that's just
I wonder if that's
It's
too
too-
soon. I mean, it's up to Diana to know.
November
Well, I mean,
20th?
we know exactly where we're going as far as Google Classroom this year. I mean, we may go deeper, but
So
we already
can
have
be
it in
part
place.
of that one on November 20th?
It could be.
That's what I was
Right.
thinking would fit in. And just kind of give a demonstration. And I think a lot of parents showed up last year because there was concern about some were stuck in the Eco, some were in Power School, some were in Google Classroom. But if our platform's now Google Classroom, it's Google Classroom, and give a demonstration on that. And
Yeah, I'd like to see Google classroom, and I think I'd also really like to see, like, across the different grade spans, sort of some examples of, like, lessons, projects, with a clear articulation of, like, what the learning objective is and how technology helps meet that particular learning objective, right? Not that it's a single learning objective, right? So there might be, probably some multifaceted learning objectives. I mean, I think, well, we'd all like to see it. I'd love to see it. And I think the public would like to either see it or hear about it.
Right.
But, yeah.
So we'll just tag it on to the November 20th workshop about the website. And if everything else is acceptable, then we can vote. Can we vote, even though that you're just writing it in?
I don't think it materially changes
Okay.
the.
Okay, great. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right.
Next item is NISBA annual business meeting voting delegate. The recommended action is that the Board of Education designates one of its members who will be in attendance at the New York State School Boards Association 2017 Annual Convention business meeting on Saturday, October 14, 2017, to serve as the voting delegate.
Okay.
Nominate Jen.
I was just going to say.
Vice President Peggy Clemens.
Well, you're both going to be there, so one of you decide who's going to vote.
I'll do it.
I'd like to nominate Dr. Peggy Clemens, Miss Vice President.
I'm happy to serve. I'm so glad the board and the district is sending me to the conference. I will serve as our voting delegate, and I will go to the business meeting.
Excellent.
Thank you, Peggy.
Is there a second to the nomination?
I'll say.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have 2 minutes to
I think we're going to need to change.
I don't know why
Actually-
that's Laura's decision.
No. You might need to change.
I don't have to change it.
Okay.
I just want to let you know.
Okay.
Okay, the next item is the ratification of the memorandum of agreement between the Haldane Board of Education and the Haldane Faculty Association for the period July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2020. And the recommended action is that the Board of Education ratifies the memorandum of agreement between the Haldane Board of Education and the Haldane Faculty Association for the period of July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2020, and authorizes the board president, superintendent, and business manager to sign the agreement on behalf of the district.
May I get a motion?
Motion.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations. Okay.
Do you want to give a few comments about our the contract, now that it's been ratified?
Sure. We have a contract that I think both sides feel comfortable and both sides feel that we've been able to do what is in the best interest of everybody in the district. It's a contract that has 1.5% increases over a 3-year period. There's also a give back on the part of the HFA where they're going to be paying into the insurance for an additional 2.5% over the years. Right now they're paying 12.5%, and at the end of the contract they'll be paying 15%. So there was also an increase in all the extracurricular and sports opportunities, and I have to say that I appreciate the fact that for the last 5 years the contract has been frozen as far as the extracurricular and the sports stipend. So I think it's time that we move it back in, and so I think that there's little bits and pieces but that's primarily what we settled on.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Well, speaking on behalf of the HFA, I can say that not only was our turnout for today's vote, we voted today, and not only was the turnout pretty much unprecedented. Like speaking with people who have been a part of the HFA for a long time, over 90% of the membership turned out for the vote, and it was voted unanimously to approve. So I think that speaks volumes that the HFA is very, very happy with the terms, and and I just want to say thank you very much to you, Dr. Bowers, and you, Anne, and Jen, and Laura, because it was a lot of hard work and a lot of discussion, and I feel like maybe over speaking, but I do feel like this is a good sort of turning point as far as our communication and and moving forward, and I think this really sets a good tone for the faculty. So thank you, and I'm really happy that we came to this agreement.
Well, thank you.
And I would like to point out that this was the first faculty association contract that Dr. Bowers oversaw for us, right?
And I really want to give kudos to Jen for all her efforts and endless meetings and hard work, and Dr. Bowers and the faculty. It really means a lot to have great faculty, and we're glad we came to a conclusion.
And the full contract can be
Eventually.
Yes.
read on the
Now that we
website
have it
shortly.
signed and it's been ratified and approved, now it can go online.
Very good.
It is really nice to know that the faculty are as satisfied as they are. I think it's great. And thanks very much.
Okay, board retreat, we just discussed. We decided on October 10th, 6 to 9, and the place is to be determined. NYSBA policy manuals. Okay, NYSBA policy manuals.
So I should have thought to ask about this beforehand. Is it on for us to approve or just discuss?
I think it's just to discuss.
Yeah, so, sorry.
Well, because I feel like I should have a better understanding about what this is compared to what we currently have with Erie BOCES. And I'm the first to admit that I am informed and want to be better informed.
So I think what the difference is, what we have been doing and what we're looking to do is to take the NYSBA policy, the recommendations of all the policies that need to be part of our policy manual, and make sure that our policy has everything the NYSBA policy has by taking the NYSBA policy and adding it to it. So it's almost like a full rewrite of the policy manual. And so I think that's the difference, where we would just get policies and we'd put it in. We have some that are antiquated that we would have to rewrite almost entirely, some that are pretty up to date, but use the NYSBA, and as I think this is what we agreed on, use the NYSBA policy as the template and then make it meet our needs.
But what were we doing with Erie? Isn't that what we were doing with Erie?
Well, yes, but the difference too is they will manage the policy manual online. So, and Erie would do that too. They would do it through board docs, but I think the board had a better comfort level with using NYSBA than you did with Erie BOCES in our last conversation.
Well, I would say that I might have pushed that, but it really may have been due to a lack of understanding about what we actually really even have now with Erie BOCES, if they're the same. Because I think and I don't know, maybe neither, regardless, we have to step up to the plate and really engage in this. And it's, in a systematic way. But I think I wanted a person to come and maybe they have it already. I almost wanted I wanted a policy audit. I want somebody to come and really lead the process. And maybe that's not something we can rely on somebody to do. And maybe, I don't want to switch to, I really like NYSBA. I like everything they do, but I don't really know enough about what's happening with Erie BOCES and
was there discussion that it
don't know
may
if
be
it's been
easier to incorporate NISBA into the website versus Erie BOCES only goes to board docs.
Yes, we had a little
Yes, we
bit
did
of
have
that was
that
the main
conversation.
is
Well,
that
I
the
don't
main
think they
reason?
only go to board docs, but if you want to put it on board docs, you have to go through Erie BOCES.
Okay. That was part of the conversation I remember.
What does Erie BOCES currently charge us?
It's very similar to what the cost is.
I'm not convinced there's actually a difference between the two.
I don't know if there is.
Would Erie BOCES so give us a policy consultant? Right? Like that's one of the things, I think one of the things is person power, right? It's, you're really busy, we're really busy, Linda's really busy, but it's something that we all want to make a big commitment to. And what I think I understood, and again, probably, underinformed, was that one of the things NISBA offered would be somebody to really help scaffold this process.
Well, they would give us policies that were already created, which Erie BOCES does as well. But honestly, I think that you have to have somebody that really takes the leadership role because they need to know the district. And you can't necessarily
And so
create something.
It needs to be one of us. It needs to be us.
It needs to be somebody that knows the district.
So, and how does this cost differ from Erie BOCES?
I think all in all, it's about the same. If you get all the services, like right now, we only get the BOCES, the Erie BOCES we're only doing the policy manual. We're not having them, regulate it on the website, which is something that I think we've all agreed that we should have, and we haven't had in the past.
All right, so what I see in this contract, and maybe it's different than Erie BOCES, but like I'm looking at the top of page, I'm looking at number 2 on page 1, that NISBA agrees to provide the following services. Assign a policy consultant, and it sort of says what their fees are and what they're going to do. And then we would agree to have a team, have somebody act as a liaison. Like what I read in this is somebody who, now granted, it costs money, but that there would be somebody to really walk us through. Not that they would do it, even though that was my secret desire, that somebody would just like we would like have a perfect policy manual. But I have to say, like, I'm actually really committed to the idea that this is going to at least take my time and attention this year. Like, it's something I'm really committed to doing. And like the way this is structured the way that I know how to get things done, right? There's somebody, you make a time, you make an appointment, you sit down, you do it. And to me, that's what's appealing about this. But if Erie BOCES would do the same thing, that's what I don't know. And so maybe this is a conversation for us to have at the retreat. I mean, the retreat is next month. I mean, I think that would be fine. But I don't know. I don't know, and I've never seen the Erie BOCES contract. I don't know what they offer.
And I don't know that, here they provide the electronic copy and one bound copy. I think right now we're feeling like there might be a couple of different versions or copies. So would Erie BOCES, who we're using right now, develop the one bound copy? And
Well, so
Well, we have a bound copy that came from Erie BOCES.
okay,
That we do already have.
okay.
But it's stacked like this, and it's not user friendly. So I think, weren't you working on putting that into chapters? Do I remember that?
No, I was
From
not.
Erie BOCES?
No, I was
No,
not.
maybe it's Linda.
I think we're just kind of looking for somebody else to be the silver bullet here. I don't think NISBA is any different than Erie BOCES.
But I've never seen, I've never been aware that Erie BOCES part of what they would do would be dedicate a person with the team. Like, I read this as an MOU. They have this set of responsibilities, we have this set of responsibilities, we enter into this agreement to work collaboratively with them to do this thing. Up till now, I felt like it's this thing that we just kind of have to do on our own, and it's big, and it's confusing,
But as Diana said, we're not really using Erie BOCES to its fullest potential in terms of like the gold package. This is the gold package from NISBA.
Well, then we should see the gold package.
So we
from
should see the
Iribosi's.
gold package from.
It's basically what we've been doing, plus the fact that they'll manage it on the website.
But see,
But
I
they
see
won't
this
give
as
us a
different.
consultant.
To me,
They
that's
don't
different.
come down. Yeah.
Yeah, I see this as different too.
I don't necessarily need somebody to come down.
And I think you have three meetings where they will come down.
And Iribosi's won't do that.
I don't believe that they do that, no.
So I'd like
But to be fair, we haven't asked either.
We haven't asked.
So I think
We
that's
could
what
see
we
the
should
gold
do.
package from Iribosi's and the gold package of this, and then
Compare.
continue to think about it, because I really actually, I have thought about it, and I actually think I probably should have suggested that we get a policy committee, because somebody has to take responsibility for being the board person to make sure that this moves forward. It's actually the kind of thing that I can do. It is.
Volunteering yourself, Peggy?
I am. And I just want to make sure that we have the right.
No, I think it
Structure
sounds
for
good.
doing
I think
it.
that it's super important. It's obviously needed. It's great that Peggy, you are feeling compelled to lead on this topic. I think if we get a comparison from Iribosi's, so we can at least make an educated decision that NISBA's the right call or both Iribosi's is the right call, then we can move forward.
Right.
Good.
Okay. So we'll get an Iribosi's quote.
So will you follow up on that?
Oh, yeah, I'll have to Linda.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is Board of Education goals. We have to start talking about what our goals will look like for this year. I know when I looked at these, I thought number
16, 17? Or is this
This
17,
is-
18? Or is
this
this 15,
we
16?
need to do 17, 18, but what was put on here was our
That's my point. I feel like
16.
these have been our goals from
Right.
last year, the year before, and should be for the following year.
Right, except I thought maybe we should move number 3, address buildings and grounds needs, to number 1. That was,
And we need to bring back the goal from 2 years ago, which was supporting
website?
the new administrative team.
Oh, yeah.
And the website.
The
website
The
was.
website, yeah, but the new administrative team
Yeah.
support, that needs to come
Right.
back.
But yeah, the website
Website was
and
a
the
goal at
policy
one point.
manual
I think the policy manual.
needs to go on there.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I felt like I realized I felt like I needed to hold us more accountable, or myself more accountable for that.
I will help.
Good.
so.
Coffee, Saturday morning.
Did you have, oh, okay.
So if the communication part, I think we've been weaving the website need into the communication. If we wanted to keep going with communication as a goal, which I think it should always be a goal. So the website maybe could get wrapped into that.
Okay. That's right.
Into
because we talked-
communication, you're saying.
Mhm.
And, we typically like to have, 3, maybe 4 goals. Probably no more than that, though.
Right.
You have to.
I don't know if this would go under communication or if it would go under the building and grounds, but I think one of the things that we've talked about informally, not as a group, but informally, is our commitment to it's not just general communication, but I think for this particular year, there's a commitment to do things we've never, not tons of them, but to do things we haven't done before in terms of going out into the community to answer questions about what's going on with the building and grounds at the district, right? So,
Like, to me, that is a buildings and grounds bullet point.
yeah.
And it's about demonstrating to the public the need for the upgrades,
Providing opportunities to answer questions and hear feedback.
Making sure we have the right support materials.
Right,
The
which is-
survey, the pictures we were talking about, the documentation.
So we'll put that under buildings and grounds and move buildings and grounds as the priority goal, number one this year. Number two, we should stick with the clear and effective communication with the public and add to that the website, which we did last year as well, but
We can be more
More
specific
sure.
with the final site
mhm.
development.
Talk about the company coming in, like working with the company.
One of the things, I mean, in terms of communication, it seemed like one of the things that went really well last year was when a group of parents came in and met with you. And I think to make sure it's like, I mean, so there's the one-on-one I mean, maybe it stays the way, initiative to communicate one-on-one with more community members, or to create opportunities for there to be direct communication.
Smaller
Well, the
group.
parent
With slower-
university,
Yeah.
the learning walks or listening walks that Dr. Bowers is planning on doing. Those are part of that.
Right. Or,
Program.
maybe to build on initiatives that, you know, were started last year in terms of, you know, meeting with small group as well as developing new.
And I know, like, the strategic plan, I feel like should always be a goal of ours, but I do feel like if we actually wanted to keep it to 3 or 4 only, you know, by addressing the buildings and grounds needs, we are addressing the strategic plan.
Right.
And looking at that 5 years facility plan, you know what I mean? That is part of the strategic plan. So if we wanted to validate that a bit into the buildings and grounds goal, I feel like we could.
Okay. Are we going to add policy manual and administrative support of the administrative team? I feel like I feel especially this year, the support of administrative teams is important.
It's tricky though how we actually do that.
I was actually
thinking It's the same thing. more-
What would that be?
It's more that we encourage Dr. Bowers to do that.
Right.
I mean, we can make sure we're inviting them in as much as possible to give reports and keep them a part of our workshop topics. But how does the board actually support them beyond just supporting Dr. Bowers? Really?
Because
Right.
Dr. Bauer's goals will basically be reflective of ours.
Right.
So,
But I
That
guess
could
we
be-
should say, maybe that's a question to you, Diana, because we're saying that we want that to be, I guess, one of your goals. But that wouldn't necessarily.
Thank you.
But that wouldn't necessarily be our goal.
Yeah.
But I know that you usually, your goals usually reflect our goals.
Well, I can certainly
Could you have an
extend mine.
addendum?
Yes, I could. I can
Could
do
you
an
have an
addendum.
extra goal?
Well, I think the strategic plan will still be mine if you don't use that. And then supporting the administrative team will certainly be mine, even if you don't put that in. I mean, you may have we may have to vary a little bit now and again.
Yeah.
I'm okay with
I mean,
that.
I think
Not-
it should be in there.
It should be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe under
But in reality,
communications, like, support through the communications. We're keeping our lines of communication open with the staff.
and inviting the public to get to know the new administrative team, making them part of the fabric of our community. That's
Sure.
part of communication with the public. We could argue that point.
Okay. And I think, Peggy, you're right, and Margaret, maybe you mentioned the policy. I think policy is really what we're driven off of, and it's important.
Is it on its own? Is it actually part of our way? I mean, policies are a way to communicate to the public, but it probably stands by itself. I don't know. I was wondering,
It
does
seems
it
like this year we're talking about like a real initiative with it.
It is an initiative.
It's not, So it might need its own bullet point. It might need its own number.
I think it needs its own number.
So, to make an initial plan, develop a timeline, institute protocol.
Committee, a smaller committee, whatever we're gonna do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And right now, there's still, if you go to policies on board docs, it still links to the Google folder. Didn't we decide we didn't want that to be there because it's not consistent, or did we want that to link? Right, so right now, if you go to policies on board docs, there's a link to, and I can't remember what we said. If you go to policies and you click on it, if you just click on policies, it's a
It brings
hyperlink
up
and
a
it
whole
takes you
bunch of
into
Google Drive.
Google Drive, whatever I
But
said.
not everybody has Google Drive, and that's when it becomes problematic.
Well, because you have to have a Google account to go into Google.
And you have to have Google Drive. Not
And you have to have
everybody
Google
has
Drive.
like
You
a
have to have the
Drive app on there.
You do?
Yeah.
I just thought it was the web. I think it is. You can get it. You don't have to have
But
it
it doesn't
installed.
give you the whole manual that way.
Well,
either.
I just don't know if we want, like, we know it's a work in progress. We know it doesn't have to be. We want it to be available to the public at some point. But we know it's not mandated by law that it's open to anybody who wants it. I don't know. I guess I'm saying, I'm not sure if this should be accessible to everybody, because I don't know if it's consistent. I don't know. It's not that I want to hide the policies
we should
for
pull
the
it
public.
off until it's complete, because that might be years from now.
Well, I just don't know what this is.
I don't know what this is either. It's not even like updated. Like we don't have like the fundraising policy, for example. That's not on here.
Yeah.
It's not being systematically updated. It's not that we want to hide it from the public. Anybody can come into the district and see the policies.
I think this is why we had the discussion of NISBA, Erie BOCES.
Right, because we wanted to get it on. But it's still, to get it online, you've still got to go through and update it, the whole thing.
Yes.
Right.
My concern is, like, I don't really know if this is the policy manual. I don't know if this, and it's not structured according to, like, the policies or.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we're looking for.
Okay, so then we're gonna take this so that it's not, so are we gonna leave it linked
Because
through
what's
board docs,
on
or
the-
it's not gonna be linked through board
What's on the
docs?
website, although it's not searchable and user friendly, it is accurate as our current policy
Oh, is
manual.
that right?
No, it's not always. No, we still haven't gotten to that point. So I think we have to have a way of making sure that that happens. And that's going to require some additional. We also need to know what final site. We should probably find out how they plan on doing it as they develop it, so we do it in a way that's compatible with what they're going to do.
I don't know, am I the only person that feels strongly that having the link to the Google Drive is a bad idea?
No, I think you're right.
I think
I want, because I
We have
really
to
think
figure
it's-
out what final site's going to do.
I know. I think
That's what we need to
so you'll have Leah kill that link from both board docs and from, and from, Julia will take care of it. From board docs and
Because it
from.
is confusing, actually. Like, so if you go to the website and you click on school policy manual, at least it looks like a school policy manual. I mean, I don't know if it's all accurate, but at least there's some page numbers and it's in order.
Yeah, it's getting there.
So I would say this is a better choice than the Google Drive hodgepodge of some policies, not all policies.
Yeah, some things are called manuals that really aren't.
That policy manual
Okay,
is in
I think we're coming to a conclusion that we should have the policy manual as one of our goals, or policy distribution.
Yes.
No, it doesn't.
If you go to the one from the Board of Ed page, where you,
It takes you into the Google Drive.
But it's the whole policy manual.
right, the one from, originally from 1998.
That's what I see.
I see the actual manual.
That document
Oh,
is
that's
on the
in
Google
here.
Drive. That's one of the documents that's on the Google Drive.
Anyway, let's decide to take all of this off until we know exactly what we have in
That's,
our
this is the one she's.
Yeah, but then why
This
is
is on the
everything else
website.
there too?
I can't answer.
I know you can't answer.
You know what, Peggy, I think you and I should probably sit down and put a timeline together on how to do this, and that will be part of that timeline, but I don't think we can just pull it off at this point.
We're gonna have to change the tape in 2 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. If then nobody else feels that way, that's fine.
Well, I feel that way, but
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 for now, maybe we should keep that one document on the website.
Keep the one document and
Right.
take everything else off.
Right.
That's fine with me.
Which one document?
The one document that,
The big one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you in
But-
agreement, Jen?
Yeah, but all the others are superseding policies, that's the
then
thing.
Never mind. I obviously
Right.
don't even understand it, so I guess leave it the way it is.
I think we can leave it the way it is. It just needs to be dealt with tout suite,
Okay.
which I think we've all agreed to.
Okay.
You need the superseding ones on there because the letters.
That makes sense.
Sense.
No one's gonna know that by just looking at that website.
Okay. So we're making that a goal. Our policy manual. Okay. All right, last item, board docs tutorial available at curriculum nights. Last year, we, at curriculum night, gave small tutorial talks, and Julia was so kind to put together little
Worked well.
pink slips, and I thought it was well received.
I'm sorry.
I'm
Are you
sorry.
going to write up a draft of those goals?
Oh, sorry,
and
yeah,
then
yes.
kind of
I'll send them
send
out
it
to,
around, and then we'll give comment and maybe
Yes.
look to try to ratify it sometime beginning of October business meeting?
yeah,
Is that
that's when we
a good goal?
did.
Yeah, well, with the
retreat,
It has-
finalize it at the
We
retreat.
can talk about it at the retreat if
and
needed.
Ratify it
Okay,
with the goal.
Okay,
yes,
sorry.
sorry, I didn't even, yes, I'm gonna put them together, send them around, and we'll discuss at the retreat. Board tutorial, at the curriculum nights, Jen had sent an email, suggesting that maybe we should do that again. It was well received last year. I think we should do it again this year.
Will the new website include board docs again? We're not abandoning board docs in this,
Oh, no.
right?
No.
Right.
So this is for board docs.
So that we can show the public how to navigate through board docs. Last year I know I did the high school. I don't remember.
I did the K2, I think you did 3-5.
Yeah, I didn't do one. You did one.
I did one, I guess.
I'm
with
the only
middle
one that
school.
didn't do one.
And
Yeah.
this year, this Thursday, I said that I would do the middle school because the new principal asked, Miss Silke asked if I would give a few comments. So I said, sure, and I'll talk about board docs.
You were suggesting that maybe this year we don't need, last year we did or at least I did, I think Peggy you did too, we did like a full PowerPoint.
I did not.
Oh, well, was I the only one who did that?
I did not do a full PowerPoint last year either. I just.
Well, I did, and
I used the.
We used the
slides-
little-
I used the slides as a cheat sheet. I didn't do a whole presentation.
okay, well, I had a whole presentation. It wasn't that long, but it just talked through in like real time. I think Julia made the presentation, or Ann, one of you guys.
Okay, we have to cut. We are going to another tape.
That's
Okay, so we're back. Can we have, let's go back to, we're talking about board docs tutorial.
So
Last,
we talked about not doing a whole. Apparently, I was the only chump that did the whole presentation. I was the overachiever. I didn't make the presentation. I just spoke it. I just said it. But the sheets that Julia made were really helpful. And we had them as handouts, and they can either live. There's usually a desk somewhere of forms that they hand out.
so these were the sheets that Julia made for us last
yeah.
year.
Oh, I use those.
Yeah, I use those too. And we just give a little, 5-minute, 10-minute speech in the beginning of the curriculum night as an opportunity to direct people to board docs, to get some board information, invite people to meetings, give them a face to you as a board member. So I think we should do it again. I don't know. I can reach out to David Wallach to see if he's open to it. Should we ask permission, maybe?
Oh,
I don't know if he has a
I'm
plan.
sure he'll
sure
be
he
fine
would.
with it. Yeah.
I said I would limit my speaking at the middle school night because as part of the middle school improvement team last year, they were trying to revamp the curriculum night so that parents could spend more time in the classroom learning about their child's curriculum. So I think we're trying to limit the amount of time in the General Assembly. So that's why I felt like I'll
You know,
just...
at the elementary level, it might be different because, especially K through 2, you know, the PTA president gets up and introduces herself, the school foundation does, and sometimes they're new people to the...
So I think it's okay. What I'm saying is if you feel like you
Yeah.
want to do the presentation where I'll go up and give a quick blurb about...
Maybe
Oh,
we can do
yeah.
something at Parent University.
Another opportunity. Why not? I just feel like the more we tell people about this, the better off.
Sure.
Whether they take advantage of it or not, at least they hear us saying, we want you to know what we're talking about. We invite you into the process. So, Julia, can you
Make some pink slips for you.
make some pink slips for me? I'll do the K through 2 one.
I don't know, I can't do high school, I just don't have time in the next couple of weeks. And I'm not sure if I'll be in town on the 28th. So.
I don't know what the curriculum night schedule is. I might be.
On the calendar.
It's on the calendar.
No, I know, but like I was thinking I could do both because I'll be here.
Oh,
But I don't know if I'll be in a classroom. Like I don't know what the
okay.
plan is for the night.
That's actually my curriculum night in my school on the 28th, same day.
All right, so I can help out with either.
I'm doing middle school on Thursday, this Thursday. If
So-
somebody can pick up the high school,
I'll do high school.
okay, that's Wednesday the 13th.
Jen, find out about if you can do both on the 28th. If you can't, and if I'm in town, I would do it, but I don't know if I'll be in town.
So
Okay.
this seems like it's a little different though than last
isn't.
year.
Yeah, we modified that for a number of reasons.
So you may.
So is the
I think
general going to be with everybody?
Yes,
Oh, well then,
So then that's-
then I'll get everybody.
yeah. It's just the beginning and the end is within the classroom. And then there's just one general session in the middle.
So at 7:00 is the general session.
Correct.
For K through 2 and 3 through 5.
Correct.
Oh, very good then. Got it.
Okay, perfect. So I think we're all covered. Great. Okay, any additional communication from the public? We're down to bare bones.
We almost lost Anne. She was
Yes, this has been a long meeting. I want to thank you all for coming and joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Congratulations.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.